that moment in Princess Bride, wait, what? No. You know that moment in the Princess Diaries where Mia has just gotten her hair rejuvenated?
Mr. O'Connell, there's a school rule that says nobody's allowed to wear hats in class, and I don't think anybody should be an exception to that rule, do you?
No, Lana. Yeah, I'm sorry, but hats are against the dress code. Mia?
Mamma mia! Look who's trying to fit in now. It's a wig, right?
I think it looks really sweet, Mia.
You know the one thing that stands out to me, aside from how beautiful her hair looks? Mia, why aren't you protecting your hair underneath that hat with a satin lining? If you would like to know how to make a bucket hat with a satin lining, I'm going to show you two different methods. One where it is essentially a reversible hat, and the second where you just use some lining. You may have made a bucket hat before or bought one and you're like, oh, this is pretty great, it fits, but hey, my hair is not too big right now. And you're like, I have big hair. Like, not just big hair, but big hair. But not like just big hair. I have big hair. And that is not gonna fit underneath this tiny hat. So I made a hat that is even bigger to accommodate big hair. The original pattern for the hat was by the Essentials Club, so I have put a link in the description box to her pattern, and then my adjusted pattern that is accommodating the larger hair types. I have put a link to where you can download that in my description. So like I said, I got this pattern from the Essentials Club, and you can find a link to the pattern in the description box, and you're just going to need to cut out the pattern and just, you know, use some paper scissors to cut out the pattern. Once you have your pattern cut out, you should have 3 pieces, one circular top, a headband piece, and the brim piece. And then you'll just want to pin your pattern to the fabric of your choice. You really don't need too much fabric, probably about like a quarter of a yard, but you know, you can get half a yard if you'd like, and just make sure you cut out the exact amount that you need. So you'll have 4 brim pieces, 2 headbands, and then 1 circular top. I only cut it out of the circle top, so this is just gonna get sewn like this, and then I cut out the satin out of the headband as well, so that is just going to go on top. So when they get sewn together, it's going to look something like this. So first thing that I'm doing right now, I need to sew the 2 headband pieces together, and I'm gonna use, I don't know, I think the seam allowance is like a 1/4 inch, so I'm gonna sew these 2 together right now. So this is the wrong side of the satin, and this is the right side. So this is the side you want touching your hair, and this is the wrong side of the actual hat, and then this is the side of the hat that's like, you know, if you have your hat on, this is what people would see. So this would be the right side of the hat, this is the wrong side of the hat, this is the wrong side of the lining, and this is the right side of the lining. So you want to put wrong sides together of the satin lining and the hat, and then you're going to stitch the actual hat part right sides together. So this is the right side and this is the right side, and then you want to stitch this together, and I'm going to stitch it down at 1/4 inch. So we sewed one side, and now we actually want to sew the other side shut as well. It needs to be like a loop. So I'm going to sew the second side shut, and I'm going to do the same edge stitching on the seam allowance as well. It's time to attach the headband to the circular top, but before we do that, I suggest that you stitch the lining down. There's so many layers going on right now with all of this. I feel like it would be best if you stitched this layer down, and then honestly, if you'd like, you could probably do like a basting stitch here as well. So here we have our bucket hat top, and then here is the band, and we are going to attach the top to the circular tops. So the way that you know which one is the top and which one is the bottom, you can see that it angles upward. So the top of the hat is smaller than the bottom of the hat. Now I'm going to pin this all the way around my top, and I'm pinning right sides together. Okay, so this is what your hat should look like once it's all been pinned together. Once you have it pinned, now you can stitch it all the way around. So now at this point, you have stitched the side band to the top of the hat, and now we can turn it inside out. And you know, it's totally okay if you have some like little puckers and stuff, you know, it's fine, you know, it's a handmade hat. I'm going to stitch down the seam allowance. So you see the seam allowance right here. What I want to do is do a top stitch like I did here, or an edge stitch, and I'm going to do it all the way around, and I'm going to make sure that I have my seam allowance facing downward when I sew. So you should have a total of 4 of these, and you're going to stitch them together at the base down here. So what we need to do is stitch 2 of these together on the curve, on the bottom curve, and then we're gonna stitch the other 2 together on the bottom curve. Oh, don't take it with you. Once you have sewn both pieces together, what you want to do is open them up. You can see this one is already open right now. So you're gonna open it up, you're gonna pin it and sew right sides together on this side, and then also on this side. Here is the brim. I'm gonna press these seams. Now it's time to stitch the brim around the actual hat. So you just want to stuff your hat inside and make sure you match up your seams, and then you can just pin around and then also stitch around. So we're just sewing right side to right side, so when you turn it over, then we're gonna have our hat. Look at that, it's done basically. You know, obviously I can do some of those lines that are pretty classic to bucket hats, but it's essentially done. I mean, I do want to tuck these raw edges under and then do a top stitch like I did for right here, but you know, I'm impressed, and I don't know why I should be impressed, because it's just a tiny hat, but you know, it's so fun what you can make with just a couple of seams. One hat down. I really don't like how messy this looks, and you know, one way that you could fix that is if you had a serger, which I did have a serger, but it broke. These threads are probably gonna come off and be in my hair, which I just don't want that at all. I have made my pattern bigger by 1/2 inch to allow for more seam allowance. So now I'm gonna take this other canvas that I have, and then I will use this. With your outer layer, we only cut one of the headpiece. We cut 2 of the brim pieces, and then we cut 2 head pieces. I've already constructed my outer layer, so this is my outer layer right now. It's a lot bigger than this first one I made. So, you know, if you have the big hair like I do, it's nice to have a big hat to keep all that big hair in. You should have 2 headband pieces, 2 brim pieces, and only 1 of these, like the actual circle that will be at the top of your head. If you find that you don't care for how large it is, like if it's too big around your head and you want it tighter, you can just increase the seam allowance. So I included 1/2 inch seam allowance in the pattern, so instead of sewing it at 1/2 inch, you could probably sew it at 3/4, and then, you know, it would be a little tighter. I have decided, since I didn't put lines on the brim of the first hat I made, of the blue one, I'm actually going to sew some lines, some of those traditional bucket hat lines. I think I might stitch them like 1/4 inch apart. So I'm going to stitch one, and I need to stitch it 1/2 inch away from the edge. I want my first line to be 1/4 inch away from the final edge. then I would just stitch this at 3/4 inch, and then I'll just use my presser foot to measure out the distance until I get to the top. And if you do find that your hat is still really flimsy and you're worried about the structure of the brim, you can always cut out some interfacing and attach it in between both layers. So interfacing is always an option for you. Pretty dark outside right now, but that took a long time for a little reward. Like, you can hardly see it, but you know, yeah, I think it would look nicer, you know, if this was like a pattern fabric and you could see this. Like, it's not giving me that Ami song vibe. Here I have the lining. I mean, you know, it wouldn't look like this because this is supposed to be touching your hair, but I actually really like this black version of it. I have no idea where my day went. It's 7 o'clock already. Like, didn't I start this at 4? I'm so confused. I have my decorative stitches completed. You're gonna take the outside, this is the right side of the fabric, and then you're gonna take the right side. I've turned my lining hat inside out, so this is the wrong side. So you are going to pin the right side of the lining to the right side of the outer layer. Make sure your seams line up, and then you're gonna pin. So pin one seam and then pin the other seam. This prevents you from having, I don't know, your seams not line up. So you always want to pin your seams first, and then you can start pinning the rest of it. You're gonna pin all the way around, but you're actually going to leave probably like just a little section open. So I'm gonna put a pin on either side of this opening, because I'm gonna leave this open because this is how we're gonna turn the hat inside out. So now my hat is all pinned all the way around, and I'm going to stitch all the way around except for this opening that I have. So I will back stitch when it comes to either side of this. Actually, wait, is that my opening? Hello. My hat is done, basically. So if you can see, I left an opening. Yes, I did stitch this in black because, I mean, whatever. So let's do the arduous task. This is such a small hole, and I'm gonna regret trying to turn this hat inside out from this little tiny hole, but I'm doing that. Now all you have to do is turn this on the inside. You do need to press these seams. One of the last things that you need to do after you press these seams flat is that you need to turn the seam allowance in on either side. Yeah, you're just gonna have to hand stitch this closed, or if you have any fabric glue, you can use that. I'm gonna close this, I'm gonna press it, and then, you know, I'll do my final reveal of my 2 satin-lined hats.
Distant little dream floating in my mind, reaching out to touch, then it fades into the night. And it's in my soul, it's in my soul, it's in my soul. I can feel it. Why is the no, why is the no, why is the...
So I hope this video was useful for you if you've been wanting to make a bucket hat. Please let me know which one you liked more, either the blue one or the white one. I personally liked the white one. I thought the blue one was a little too small. I actually plan on making, I think, about 2 more bucket hats, but they are of a different variety, and when I make them, I will share them with you all on how you can make those as well. So they're gonna be a little different. Anyways, it's that time. It's time to end the video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in another video. Bye.
sinking down into the sand. Just 'cause you